Was Tartaria a real empire erased from history? Tonight on Mythoria, we drift into this quiet question, letting it carry us like a soft current through the shadows of forgotten maps. Long ago, cartographers inked the name Tartaria across the vast steppes of Asia, a word that stretched wider than their knowledge, wider than their certainty. It was not a kingdom carved in stone, but a name that filled the silence of the unknown, a label placed gently where mysteries remained. Some say it was an empire erased, hidden beneath the weight of other histories. Others believe it was never real, only an echo of misunderstanding, a dream mistaken for truth. As your breath slows and your thoughts grow lighter, let this story unfold softly, like mist over endless plains. Now let us begin. Was Tartaria a real empire erased from history? Was Tartaria a real empire erased from history? A whisper of forgotten maps. You begin by drifting into the quiet mystery of old maps, where the name Tartaria appears like a faint shadow. You see it stretched across Asia, yet fading as centuries turn. Was it a place or a dream etched in ink? You close your eyes and imagine a dimly lit library. The air feels thick with the scent of dust and parchment. Before you, on a wide wooden table, lies a map, an ancient map, its edges curled like old leaves, its colors faded into sepia. On that fragile surface, you see a word written boldly across the vast northern lands, Tartaria. The word looks mysterious, almost dreamlike. It stretches across a space larger than your imagination, covering what you know today as Russia, Mongolia, parts of China, and Siberia. Yet this name, once written so confidently by cartographers, now lingers only as a whisper in forgotten atlases. You let your heart rest on this strange word. You wonder, was Tartaria a real empire? A civilization erased by time and power? Or was it simply a placeholder, a shadow on a map, drawn by those who did not yet understand the world? Like a lullaby, your mind drifts through the winding lines of ink. Cartographers of the 16th and 17th centuries often filled their maps with names not to describe nations, but to tame the unknown. They wrote Tartaria as if to cover the endless expanse of Central Asia, lands they had never walked, rivers they had never crossed, mountains they had only heard of in travelers' tales. You picture the map makers, candlelight flickering against their tools, a compass, a quill, a sheet of parchment, and silence. They did not know the people who lived in these lands, their cultures, their languages, and so they gave it one name, a single word to describe 1,000 lives, 1,000 stories. The more you look at the map, the more it feels like a mirror of human longing. We do not like blank spaces. We fear emptiness. And so we fill the silence with words, with shapes, with imagined borders. Tartaria was not just a name. It was a comfort, a way to believe that the unknown could still be charted, still be contained. And as you breathe softly, you realize this is how history often begins. Not with certainty, but with whispers, with shadows, with labels drawn in fragile ink. The name may not reveal truth, but it tells us about those who wrote it, about their fears, their dreams, their desire to make sense of the vast unknown. You close your eyes and see the endless steppes, winds sweeping across the grasslands. Nomadic tribes move with the seasons. Horses thunder across the earth. Tents rise and fall like waves upon the sea. Somewhere in this great expanse, life is vibrant, yet on the map it is silent, reduced to one word, Tartaria. You let yourself rest in this thought. History is not always fact. Sometimes it is longing. Sometimes it is guesswork. And sometimes it is simply a shadow written across paper. The map fades in your mind, but the question lingers like a candle that refuses to go out. What truly lay behind the word Tartaria? Echoes of travelers' tales. You hear the voices of explorers and merchants who once spoke of vast lands beyond Russia and China. Their words painted Tartaria as endless steppes, nomadic tribes, and distant horizons. Yet their accounts feel like mirages, half remembered and half lost. You breathe slowly, letting your thoughts drift from the quiet library into the open air of forgotten centuries. The maps fade, and now you hear voices. Voices carried across the winds of time. They belong to travelers, merchants and wanderers who once journeyed into the great unknown, into the lands they called Tartaria. Their words arrive like echoes. Soft at first, almost uncertain. Stories spoken around campfires, written in journals, or told to kings upon return from distant voyages. They described lands without end, steppes that stretched like an ocean of grass, horizons that swallowed the sky. They spoke of nomads on horseback, moving with herds, carrying homes on their backs in the form of tents and yurts. You picture Marco Polo, the Venetian traveler of the 13th century. He passed through Central Asia, observing the Mongols, the vast empire of Genghis Khan and his heirs. Later generations would blur these Mongols with Tartars, and soon the entire expanse became Tartaria in the European imagination. The stories were not precise. They were not meant to be. They were fragments of wonder, fragments of fear, fragments of misunderstanding. Some travelers spoke of golden cities hidden deep in the plains. Others told of fierce warriors who could ride for days without stopping, their arrows flying like storms. And still others whispered of strange customs, languages like music, and skies so wide that they made the heart feel small. You noticed something gentle in these tales. They were never complete. They were always blurred, always softened by distance. Like dreams retold in the morning, they mixed truth with imagination. The merchant who described endless markets may have seen only a small village. The soldier who spoke of terrifying warriors may have faced only a handful of raiders. Yet the echoes grew louder, repeated, exaggerated, reshaped, until they filled Europe with a picture of Tartaria as both wondrous and threatening. You rest in the rhythm of these echoes. They remind you of how stories live longer than facts. They remind you that what we believe about the world is often built not on what we see, but on what we hear. Tartaria became not a place, but a song, sung by many voices, each adding their own note, each distorting the melody just a little more. As you breathe, you imagine yourself among those caravans. The crunch of wheels on frozen ground, the distant sound of hooves beating like drums, the smell of spices, leather, and firewood, a horizon that never seems to end, and above it all, the quiet hum of human curiosity, pulling people ever further into the unknown. The echoes fade, but they leave behind a question that stirs gently in your mind. When so many voices tell stories of a place, do the stories create the place itself? The enigma of empire. You pause at the thought of Tartaria as an empire. Was it a mighty power erased from memory, or a patchwork of cultures misunderstood by outsiders? The term seems less like a nation, more like a veil draped over unknown lands. You allow yourself to drift deeper into the mystery. The word empire rests in your mind like a stone dropped into still water. It creates ripples, slow and endless, reaching into the past. Was Tartaria truly an empire? Or was it only a shadow created by others who tried to make sense of lands they did not understand? The term Tartars was used by Europeans to describe the nomadic peoples of Central Asia, Mongols, Turks, and others whose lives were bound to the rhythm of the steppe. Over time, the name expanded, growing larger and vaguer, until it seemed to cover half the world. And so, Tartaria became an empire on paper, though no single crown, no single capital, no single ruler ever claimed it. You pause with this thought: an empire without a throne, an empire without walls, an empire without a name for itself. It exists only in the eyes of strangers, outsiders who looked across the plains and saw a puzzle too vast to solve. And yet, this idea of Tartaria held a strange power. It suggested order where there was only diversity. It suggested unity where there were countless tribes, languages, and cultures. It suggested a single story where there were many. You picture a traveler standing on the edge of the steppe, gazing into the horizon. He cannot see where one tribe ends and another begins. He cannot measure the distance between one custom and the next. And so he folds them together in his mind, imagining a single empire where in truth there were only scattered pieces. You breathe in this paradox. Sometimes history is not about what was. Sometimes history is about what others needed it to be. To Europeans, Tartaria was easier to believe in as a mighty empire, because the alternative, the endless complexity of nomadic life, felt too vast, too shifting, too uncertain. You let your thoughts linger on the people themselves, the horsemen, swift and silent, the herders, guiding flocks across frozen ground, the craftsmen, shaping tools, weaving clothes, telling stories by firelight. They did not call themselves Tartarians. They did not see their lives as part of a great empire. Their worlds were smaller, more immediate, woven from kinship and survival. And yet, the label remained. The maps called them one thing. The travelers wrote them into one story. The empire existed not on the land, but in the imagination of those who drew lines across it. As your eyes grow heavy, you reflect on the nature of empires. Some are built with armies, some are built with laws, and some, like Tartaria, are built only with words. Words that echo, words that linger, words that shape how future generations remember the past. You rest with this soft realization. Perhaps Tartaria was not an empire of stone and steel, but an empire of language and perception. And you wonder gently, almost dreamlike. How many other empires exist only in our imagination, waiting to be believed into reality, shifting lines and vanishing names? As centuries flow, borders shift like rivers and names dissolve into silence. Tartaria disappears from atlases, replaced by Russia, China, Mongolia, and Siberia. You wonder, was it ever real, or just a placeholder for what cartographers did not yet know? You let the silence deepen, and once again the map appears before your mind's eye. But now, the ink is changing. Lines that once curved gently across Asia begin to harden, to shift, to multiply. The vast word Tartaria, once stretched across the land like a great shadow, starts to fade. Borders rise where once there were none. You see Russia expand, swallowing steppes and forests. You see China press outward, naming provinces, marking territories. You see Mongolia, Siberia, and countless smaller regions, each carved more finely, each claiming their own space. The blankness that map makers once filled with a single name is now divided, split, ordered. The mystery is broken into smaller pieces. You breathe slowly, following the rhythm of these shifting lines. History, too, is like a river. Its course bends and curves, cutting new paths, leaving old ones dry. What once seemed permanent, a word, a place, a label, can vanish like water slipping into sand. By the 18th and 19th centuries, Tartaria had almost disappeared from atlases. Where once it sprawled across half the map, now only fragments remained. Chinese Tartary, independent Tartary, Russian Tartary. And soon, even those fragments dissolved. The word was no longer needed. The lands had been claimed, categorized, absorbed into the languages of empire and state. You pause here, letting the weight of silence settle. It feels strange, doesn't it? To watch a name so large, so confident, vanish so completely. It reminds you that history is not only about what is remembered, it is also about what is forgotten. You think of people whose lives carried on as always. Nomads still moving with their herds, villages still lighting fires at dusk, children still chasing the wind across the plains. To them, the fading of Tartaria meant nothing. They did not live by the words written in European atlases. They lived by the rhythm of seasons, by the pull of rivers, by the needs of the land. But to the outside world, the disappearance of the name marked the end of something. An empire that never truly existed seemed to die, simply because the word no longer appeared on maps. It is a reminder, soft and haunting. When a name vanishes, the world forgets it was ever there. You let this truth settle into your breathing. We trust maps, we trust borders, we trust names printed in books. Yet all of them are fragile, like mist under the morning sun. They shift, they vanish. And when they do, entire worlds are erased from memory. As your eyes grow heavy, you wonder gently, if names can vanish so easily, what parts of our own world today will one day be forgotten? The birth of conspiracies. In modern times, whispers return. Some believe Tartaria was a great empire erased by design, its architecture buried, its history stolen. Others say it is only a ghost of misinterpretation. Between belief and skepticism, your mind lingers in the twilight. You rest deeper now, as if floating between the past and the present. The maps have faded, the borders have hardened, and the name Tartaria has almost disappeared. But in the quiet corners of modern Thames, whispers return, whispers that say Tartaria was not forgotten by accident, but erased on purpose. Some voices claim there was once a great empire, advanced, powerful, united, stretching across Eurasia. They say its architecture was magnificent, its knowledge profound, its cities larger than memory allows. And yet all of it was buried, rewritten, hidden beneath the histories of Russia, China, and the West. They ask, how could something so vast leave so little behind? And the question lingers like a shadow. You breathe into the rhythm of these whispers. They are not spoken in libraries, nor in universities, but in online forums, late-night conversations, and obscure books. They carry a sense of loss and of suspicion. Perhaps, they say, the victors of history did more than conquer lands. They conquered memory itself. Some point to strange buildings, grand structures scattered across cities, built in styles too refined for their time. They wonder, were these the remains of Tartarian architecture, left standing like bones of a forgotten giant? Others speak of technology hidden from us, energy sources erased, inventions concealed. The more you listen, the more the whispers spiral, weaving mystery into every empty space. But you notice something gentle beneath the noise. These stories are not only about evidence or proof, they are about longing. Longing for a forgotten golden age, longing for a secret history that explains the gaps we feel in our understanding of the world. To believe in Tartaria's erasure is to believe that mystery still lives among us, that not all has been revealed, that there are truths still hidden beneath the surface of time. You let your mind drift here. There is comfort in the idea of a hidden empire. It makes the world feel bigger, richer, more magical. It tells us that behind the curtain of history there may still be wonders waiting to be uncovered. And yet, the comfort is fragile. For if Tartaria was erased, it suggests power strong enough to bury entire civilizations. And that thought lingers, dark and heavy, like a storm on the horizon. You breathe deeply, letting the tension soften. Truth and myth weave together like threads in a tapestry. Perhaps the conspiracies are only stories, reshaped for modern ears. Or perhaps they carry echoes of something lost, something we may never fully recover. As your body grows still, you are left with one gentle, haunting thought. When we long for lost empires, are we searching for their truth, or for the parts of ourselves we fear we have forgotten? A gentle reflection. You rest with the thought that Tartaria may not be a lost empire, but a mirror, reflecting our yearning for mysteries hidden by time. As your eyes grow heavy, you ask yourself, perhaps the real story is not about Tartaria itself, but why we dream of forgotten worlds. You rest now in the soft afterglow of questions. Maps, travelers, empires, and whispers of conspiracies have drifted past you like clouds in a night sky. And yet, what remains is not certainty, but stillness. Stillness and the quiet comfort of wondering. You think of Tartaria, not as a lost empire carved in stone, but as a mirror reflecting our human need for stories, for names, for meaning. Perhaps Tartaria was never real in the way empires usually are. Perhaps it was only a label, stretched across lands too vast to comprehend. But in that label, in that fragile word, lies something profound, our yearning to connect with the unknown. You breathe gently. The people who lived on those steppes, in those forests, along those rivers, they did not call themselves Tartarians. They were Mongols, Turks, Kazakhs, Siberians, Uzbeks, countless tribes with countless names. Their lives were full, their worlds rich, though the maps flattened them into one shadow. They did not need the word Tartaria. It was others, far away, who needed it. And so you realize, sometimes the stories we tell about others reveal more about ourselves. When Europeans drew the word across their maps, they were not only describing unknown lands, they were also confessing their fear of emptiness, their longing to bring order to chaos, their desire to believe the world could be contained. In this way, Tartaria survives, not as an empire, but as an idea that slips between fact and imagination, an idea that asks us to look more closely at how we remember and how we forget. You let your thoughts drift further, softer. How many other names have vanished from history? How many empires have dissolved, not in battle, but in silence? How many worlds exist only as faint shadows in forgotten texts or as rumors passed down through generations? The thought is not heavy. It is soothing, like a lullaby, because it reminds you that history is alive, always shifting, always incomplete. And as you rest, you understand that perhaps the real story of Tartaria is not about lands or borders at all. It is about the way humans dream. We dream of lost empires. We dream of secret truths. We dream of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. And in those dreams, we find comfort, even if the empires themselves never truly existed. Your eyes grow heavier now. The whispers of Tartaria fade into silence, leaving only the rhythm of your breath. You are safe here, held by the quiet. The past does not need to be solved tonight. It only needs to be felt, like a gentle tide carrying you toward sleep. And as the final thought drifts through your mind, it is soft, like a question whispered into the dark. Perhaps the true empire is not Tartaria itself, but the empire of wonder that lives in your own heart. The quiet of forgotten worlds. The journey is over now. You have walked through maps and memories, through whispers of travelers and echoes of empires. You have followed the rise and fall of a name that once covered half the world and now lingers only as a shadow. Tartaria has faded, yet its silence remains. It teaches you that history is not a fixed story, but a river that bends and shifts, sometimes leaving entire valleys dry and forgotten. It reminds you that what we believe, what we name, what we remember, these are as fragile as paper, as fleeting as ink. And so you breathe more slowly, feeling the truth settle gently. The past does not need to be solved. It does not need to be conquered or explained. It only needs to be held, like a stone in your hand, heavy yet grounding. You let the questions drift away. Was Tartaria real? Was it erased? Or was it only an illusion, a reflection of our own need to imagine what we cannot yet know? These questions no longer matter tonight. They can rest just as you rest. Your body softens. Your breath grows deeper. The the world around you fades into stillness, and in that stillness, there is peace. Perhaps tomorrow you will wonder again about forgotten worlds and vanished names. Perhaps you will search once more for traces of lost empires. But tonight, there is nothing to seek. Only the quiet comfort of knowing that mystery will always remain, waiting like a friend in the dark. As your eyes finally close, you hear one last gentle whisper. The empire of Tartaria may not live on maps, but the empire of wonder lives forever in you.